Hello, and welcome back to Let's Improv a Story, a podcast where I work desperately hard not to say Let's Improv a Podcast as the title. But, speaking of, that is a lot what we're doing today, where we make not fanfic, wonderful fanfic is great, but instead we try to make something that could be published, could be greenlit by a studio. So, today, let's just jump right into it and take as our subject something that very likely has been assigned to somebody at a studio at some point, and that would be the project of Titanic 2, or a sequel to Titanic. Now, I'm sure we're all aware of the 1997 smash hit, both cultural and financial, of Titanic, with Jim Cameron's directing and Leo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and songs, wonderful songs. So, if we were to undertake the task of making a sequel to Titanic, which sounds a little wild, but also it made a lot of money, someone would want to make a sequel to it. It is not just called show, it's called show business. So you are certain there's someone out there who has just, spitballed it or pitched it or, hired a few writers to take a crack at it behind some NDAs and never talked about it ever again. Well, let's say we were those writers. What would we do to tackle the idea of a sequel to Titanic? Because, right off the bat, the boat sank. I mean, spoiler alert, the boat sank, and it sank hard. It broke in two, and it sank. It sank so hard, it took a long time to find it, like decades. So, what do? You can't have a direct sequel. I mean, unless you have a sort of completely surreal thing where, and then in 1927, they launched the Titanic 2 as a big middle finger to the universe. And they said, come at me, God. We're doing it again. We're doing it again. We're running it back. Here comes the Titanic 2. This time we're going straight to the North Pole. That didn't happen. And so you'd have to make that up and just be fantastical. I mean, I guess you could do something wacky and 2,000 years later, they made the Titanic 2, a spaceship to Andromeda. Guess what happened? Got hit by a big icy comet. So when I think of just the mental exercise of the hopeless but hopefully profitable idea of a Titanic sequel, the first thing that jumps to my mind is you'd kind of want to do it, I guess, on the Titanic, because you can't do it afterwards. You can't go after, even though it is a sequel. So that means something silly and sci-fi like time travel onto the Titanic. And then there's obviously romance, because it's got to have romance, right? That's the brand. It's just big sinking boat romance. But that time travel in the Titanic seems just not right. It's just something we can go into it. We don't need to go into it. I think you can feel it. Doesn't feel right. So the next most obvious thing. Now, by the way, the most obvious thing is another boat from that time period that tragically sank. What's another big sinking boat from that time? And if the Titanic's around 1912, I believe in 1915 during World War I, the Lusitania, a very Titanic-looking boat, was sunken, by, the Kaiser's forces or whatever. So there's a big boat with people on it that sinks. So just add some romance and some cameras, and you make, a bazillion dollars at the box office. Sounds great. But, you can't really call it Titanic 2, Lusitania boat. You'd probably have to call it the Lusitania. Not as catchy a name. Also, I don't know. It's not an iceberg. You're dealing with a war. I mean, that brings different stuff to it. I mean, it's certainly workable. But you have to set up the thing about the Titanic is it's just a big boat and it hits an iceberg, and it's real simple. You do have to set up the situation in the war if you do that. And I mean, it makes sense as sort of a theme, but you also can't call it the sequel to Titanic, Love on the Lusitania. You'd have to market it as from the people who brought you one big boat disaster comes another big boat disaster with love. So, I mean, if you really want to make a sequel to the Titanic, you really want to use the name Titanic in the title, which excludes using the Lusitania. And in that case, you need to probably do what I guess would be the most obvious answer, and that would be to have a concurrent love story on the Titanic, concurrent to the Jack and Rose love story from the first movie. Now, this is duplicating something, copying something, but you're doing that anyway. It's a sequel. And then you would have to, but that's probably the best thing to do. Time travel's silly. Doing it in the future is silly. I guess you could make the only way you can make a real, legitimate, it follows after in linear time sequel would be to just say, hey, the Titanic sank to the bottom of the ocean, but some people survived. There were some survivors, and I don't know, they turned into mermaids and mermen, and let's all right, forget it. Let's do it. Let's do Romeo and Juliet at the bottom of the sea, and one half of the Titanic that sank is like the Juliet portion, the Capulets, and the other half are the Montagues and their other half of the boat that's like half a mile away, and I think it's Juliet Capulet. Yeah, it rhymes. And then these two former people who became mermaids living in a sunken half of the Titanic, these kids get together and they fall in love. And they've got to take those two broken halves of the Titanic and the peoples that are in them, and with their love, bring that ship back together. Titanic 2, Under the Sea. Hey, if Titanic was a Fox feature, and that's Fox is owned by Disney now, so Disney has The Little Mermaid, why not just do it? Just make it a sequel to The Little Mermaid and Titanic at the same time. It's just like Ariel's sister, Zariel. She's found a real sweet boy who sank to the bottom of the ocean, and anyway, it sounds great, but then again, not really what you would want for a Titanic sequel. You're not going to get people back in the mood for a Titanic movie with something like that. I don't need to over-explain that. So you're probably back to the concurrent love story on the Titanic at the same time, which gives you certain things. You could actually bump into, AI version of Jack and Rose. They could cameo in the movie, or you could have a scene where they you have one of the current romantic lead characters talking about their issues, and Jack and Rose talk about Rose talk about their issue with that other new lead character, and they're going through similar stuff but different. It's a sequel. It's similar but different. They may as well talk about it. And if this is the way you're going to go, and I think it's the only way you could go, and again, you've got to get people to go along with the conceit of there was just another tragic love story on the Titanic at the same time. Give us your money. But I think, with a wink, a lot of people would actually be pretty down for it. Kids these days, this is our Titanic, not the old one. So what do? You need to set up these characters, these two lovebirds, these tragic lovebirds. So in the first movie, obviously, there's a sort of rich person, poor person thing going on, or not rich person thing going on. And you probably want to flip it, because Kate Winslet's character is wealthier, she's new money, but wants to marry old money, or is being set up that way. And Jack is, sort of just a what do you call it? Anyway, streetwise, working class person trying to catch a break. So in this one, I guess you'd want the boy, the male character, to be the more of means character, and the female character to be the more, streetwise, working class, trying to catch a break. Now, you don't want them to do the same things or be in the same situation. So I don't know what Billy Zane was. Were they just rich? I guess they were probably industrialists. So go different. That's business, but still wealthy. Make the boy, the male character, the male lead, not... I don't know, still connected, aristocratic, like a diplomat's son or something. And for the female lead, you want, not just sort of streetwise kid, which I can't remember. Did Jack have a job? Did he do things? Did he just playing cards or something to get the tickets? Though I don't think he was a professional card player. So I guess for the female, streetwise, not rich character, you'd want someone who is maybe has some sort of occupation, but I don't know. If she's just like a window scrubber, that's not very entertaining. I guess you could probably have something like, something like an actress. Actresses are not actresses generally, but like actors and actresses in that time period are not looked on as favorably, maybe yet, in 1912. I know things are starting to change in that as everyone gets to see them in moving pictures. But, historically, they've not been. So, and certainly the upper crust coming from Britain are probably not inclined to think they're spectacular. And certainly don't want their son to marry one. They would want them to marry someone connected. So, if you have a diplomat son and you have an aspiring actress or an actress who maybe she's American and just got her first break in London or whatever, and so she, a producer gave her a ticket on for the Titanic because the producer couldn't make the ride or something. You then have, two characters with backgrounds, and you've got dynamics at play there. You can see the diplomat's son's father, I guess the diplomat, doesn't want his son fraternizing with some, common actress. And you can see the actress who's had to work through not just sort of like whatever you want to call like show business issues, but just from her general not wealthy upbringing, she would have to deal with, common day-to-day streetwise kind of issues. You can see her at a scene kind of like, like that dinner party in Titanic. Hey, look, we're making a sequel. We're doing all the same stuff again. But you could see her seeing, the diplomat talks to some other foreign diplomat, and she can tell that the foreign diplomat is totally playing, the male romantic lead's father. And she says it, and the aristocratic diplomat's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, young lady, one of those beats. And later on, when he does get, betrayed or something, and gets a telegram or something, probably didn't get a telegram on the Titanic. I don't know. Did a pigeon drop a note off? Anyway, I guess they're on the same boat with the other diplomat. He learns that he's been betrayed or, whatever, played. And then he thinks like, oh, she knew. She did know. She was right. And that kind of turns him around. And, maybe in one of the sort of disaster portions, he helps save her or sacrifices himself to save her or something like that. And I mean, once the boat gets hit, it all starts playing out. It's hard to do things differently. I guess you have to do things differently, go to different parts of the ship and do different things. Like maybe Jack and Rose like ride the ship down, like straight down, if I recall. It breaks, they fall, it goes up again as the second back half sinks. And I think that you would then want, maybe these two get to like a lifeboat, and maybe they are actually on the lifeboats. And so now it's like, well, what's the tragic end, right? Obviously the tragic end of the first one, they're, floating on furniture. So, I mean, the immediate question is, well, what kind of furniture are two lovebirds going to float on? Because they float on like two coffee tables. Could they float on like, just a big mirror? Like what could they float on? Just a whole bunch of wooden spoons. Just gather more wooden spoons. We're going to make it. Probably not. And also, I mean, like, do they both survive? Do neither survive? Are they just like, we're just going to have to, I don't know, this might be it. We're just going to make out on top of all these wooden spoons we strung together and, just start, maybe we'll survive, maybe we won't. Just keep making out, blurble, blurble, blurble. And then they turn into mermaids and, bring the two halves of the ship together. But I would say, I mean, you don't want them both to die. It does seem like one has to die. I mean, they don't have to. You could have a situation where they are on a lifeboat and you're like, wait, what? Jack and Rose were on like a closet. How come these two get a lifeboat? This isn't as tragic, but maybe like a mother and her child are in the water, like barely hanging on to something, maybe two coffee tables. And, the male diplomat's son jumps into the water to give the mother and child, baby or whatever, his place in the lifeboat. And he just kind of hangs on until, I guess he freezes and his hand slips out of hers, and he kind of sinks away, even though Jack did the same thing. So I mean, you have to iron those things out. I think maybe they're even shooting a movie on the boat, so you give the diplomat's son, he can experience that side of life, and it's like, what is his character? What are you bringing him towards? I don't know that Jack and Rose learned tons about themselves or the other's world so much as they just kind of fell in love and doggedly kept finding ways to get together. So yeah, I mean, it is tough to figure out the tragedy aspect of it. It's a weird thing to be like, who do we kill? We got to kill someone or it won't feel sad, because it's not a real story. And I mean, obviously the Titanic sinking is, but so if you have the female lead survive, then you are copying the original. If you have them both die, it seems too sad. If you have the female lead die, you are in a situation where a movie like this is demographically skewed more female. And maybe that would be interesting. I mean, it's certainly, it's the 21st century. We could do things differently, she could do something heroic that does end in her, heroic demise. So I guess, maybe that's what we should do. Maybe we should have the female character sacrifice herself. And surprisingly, it's not the male and not the sort of wealthier character. And then he goes on to, I don't know, form a studio or something and make movies and dedicate them to her. Perhaps. Anyway, again, I'm pretty happy if they all just turn into mermaids and mermen and sing songs under the sea. But anyway, yeah, if you're going to do a Titanic and you're going to pick a course, I'm not quite sure how you have to, maybe you film all the endings. You just be lazy and film all the endings and just focus group it, just test it with audiences. But if you're going to do a Titanic, I guess probably concurrent is the best way to do it. And again, you are absolutely working in a sort of it's kind of a lose-lose scenario. You can't, and there's no remaking the Titanic. It's still a great movie and it still holds up. So if you're going to do a sequel, you can't do anything afterwards. You could do what probably feels the most appropriate, and it would be the Lusitania. And, in the end, like just being like, hey, let's just, get Jim Cameron to produce it and like get people who, maybe Kate Winslet plays a different part or something, just get it to feel that way and market it like that, and just get some of those old names so you can like use clips from Titanic as you're marketing Lusitania. That may be the best way to do it. But if you're forced to use the Titanic name, you just have to do a concurrent love story that kind of bounces around doing different things, and maybe is sort of legitimized by a scene or two where I don't know which one you pair up, but like the two male characters talk, Jack and the diplomat's son, and the actress and Rose talk like that. That could be a way of kind of almost making it feel real, as much as this completely fake thing could be real. But yeah, it's either you probably have to do that concurrent kind of storyline, and find a fittingly tragic but different way for them to die, or for one of them to die. But you know what? Hey, maybe they both survive. Maybe everyone expects one of them to die, and they reunite on the shore as everyone's coming, off the lifeboats. And, one was in the infirmary or something on the Carolina or something like that? The Caroline, the ship that rescued them? I can't remember. And they do actually meet up in the end, or a year later or something like that. Oh yeah, okay, this is getting better. Let's make it seem like a sad ending. And then one day, someone asks her for an autograph after, a moderate success of hers, and she's on the red carpet or something. And she realizes she's signing a ticket for a ride in the Titanic, and she looks up, and it's him, and she pulls him out of the crowd, and they kiss, and, one of the newspaper reporters is like, whoa, isn't he a lucky fan? You need a concurrent female actress from the time, but, to make maybe a joke like so-and-so and never gave me a smooch. Anyway, that sounds like a pretty happy ending, which would be actually unexpected because of all the decades of groundwork of just the ending of the original Titanic. So maybe you do it like that. Let's put a smile on my face. So yeah, let's try that maybe. Anyway, that would be a sequel to Titanic. And you know what? It may happen. In fact, given in the long arc of history, everything is remade or has a sequel made of it. Stuff you would never thought have sequels, and they're often very good. The Godfather has a sequel. Chinatown has a sequel. Everything has a sequel, or will have a sequel. And here's one for Titanic. I hope you had fun. I'm on the internet as Throwaway Lines, and I will talk to you all again next week when we work on who knows what, but I'm sure it'll be a blast.